Welcome to Navarrero's online showcase video, M.I.A. edition. Today we are finally back at the gold supply train, which has been part of one of the biggest projects recently that I started on myself, actually very shortly before I decided to call it quits on the game in its entirety. Back then I didn't know if I would ever be coming back here, so this entire project was only brought into a state where it would technically function, but it wasn't really ever fully done with, so I'm glad to pick it up again, glad to have another shot at it, and hopefully bring it to its full potential. And to be honest, I actually needed to really go and wrap my head around the entire topic again. There's a lot of intricacies with the entire project, which makes what I'm supposed to be doing here a lot more complicated than what seems to be the case at first look. And today I want to give you guys insight on that. So it's going to be a recap on the entire project, how it started, the problems that I've been facing, and where I'm currently at with the entire thing. And to properly get started here, we need to take a look at the gold mine, since that's the industry that we are trying to supply here. So yeah, this is the location. The mine is placed at the default placement for the iron ore mine. And what can I say? It's looking pretty nice. It's working out perfectly well, both in terms of how the mountain is shaped, but also the additional foundation here, which is a rigid part of the map. It's just looking pretty much perfect unless you look at some of the mirrors in the back here. Some of the stuff is slightly being buried here, but for the most part, I mean, really apart from those little details, it's looking pretty mighty. Anyways, we're not really here for the landscape, apart from it being a major topic in a few minutes. But until then, let's talk about the supplies itself real quick. We need 4 different types of goods here in order to supply the iron mine, the gold mine. First up, coal, beams, rails, and tools. And if you look at all of them, you may notice that they actually come from 4 different industries. There's no real easy way to bundle this. So yeah, let's talk about the industry placements here. The coal is actually from that mine up there, so that's rather easy to see. And in the past I actually tried building a track down here. It didn't work out that well. It was possible, but not really that fun. Beams at the sawmill over here, decently far away. Rails being produced over here at the smelter, which is, well, quite far away. And of course the tools from the ironworks. However, this is where we can start actually bundling stuff up, because I don't really bring the coal from the mine directly to where it's needed. I bring it down to the coal mine base camp, which is pretty much right next to the ironworks. So that's already working out pretty well. And while initially I was considering doing individual supplies, just having single good trains and all of that, it wasn't that much fun. Setting up a train just for 60 rails is not all that worthwhile. Coming up here for 3 cars of tools is also just a very small amount. The beams are a different story because they don't allow to load too many on the stake cars. But the coal as well, only 100 units at max, that's it's not a lot. So I eventually moved over to bundling everything up before I bring it up here. And that's the entire idea of my supply train. And not only do I want to bring all the goods up to the gold mine, I also want to bring them in a quantity that the mine can actually deal with. So providing everything at the right ratio. And the ratio is equal for everything here. So when I need 10 coal, I also need 10 beams, 10 rails, and 10 tools. And the amount that I landed on was initially 30, later doubling it up to 60. I just saw how much gold ore you get for 30 of each input item, and I decided that it wasn't enough output for the amount of time that I put into the supplies. So doubling up felt like the natural conclusion for that, and I'm pretty happy with how we landed on that. Only problem is that while 3 of the 4 uh, input storages are at least of the size that they can accept all of that, beams is once again the outlier, for only allowing to take in half of that. So I need to make sure that when I unload everything, beams come last, so that as soon as I start unloading beams, they are starting to be processed, and therefore I can avoid overfilling the storage in particular. So as soon as I start unloading, it should start draining them out again, and therefore I should be good on that front. Also, the other part in which beams are outliers is that, yeah, it's just the only good that needs a lot of cars here. Coal has a lot of options where you can load quite a few units into a single car. 10 rails go into a single stay cars and 32 tools into a single box car, so we don't need all that much of that. But rails are literally more than half of the length of a train, because I need 20 cars of them. We're going to see that in a moment. But yeah, that's another thing to be aware of, because, well, the area here is kind of limited. And that also brings me to the next point. With how the terrain shaped out, I could only make the last 2 areas here accessible through a switch and a straight line of track going straight into a stopper right here. So that's a bit of an issue, and it means that the only real easy way to supply the tools and the rails for that matter is if both of those goods are pretty much at the end of the train. So these need to be at the rear, tools, the 2 boxcars at the very rear, and right in front of that the 6 stake cars for the rails. Everything in front of that doesn't really matter all that much, although I would like to have the beams at the very front, because it's likely that I'm just gonna be pulling the entire train in here and putting the beams onto another siding for the time being until everything else has been taken care of, just to make the operations a bit smoother. But yeah, beams need to be taken care of last, and since they are going to come on 20 cars, they are going to work out a bit differently as well. Everything else not being much of a problem. Once again, only 2 box cars, 6 stake cars for the rails, and 6 hoppers. I could have also used these, but with how other things are working out, the hoppers that I chose are the better way to do it here. So yeah, that's another issue. Once again, mainly the ordering of everything. But now to the next part, and that has once again to do with the terrain. I do not have enough space here for a turnaround loop. So in order to go back down the way I came from, and I mean the other way wouldn't really be useful for anything, I need to go back this direction, and that means that I need to turn the train around in some way. And usually that happens by just disconnecting the engine, putting it into a turntable, turning it around completely, and then connecting it to the end of the train. And at that point, both the tools and the rails are now in the completely wrong spot on the train. So if I came back up in the same order as I'm leaving here, it would be a major headache to deal with. So in order to do this consistently, I needed to find a way to turn the train around once more down in the valley, and preferably do so in a way that works out with the rest of the operations that I need to do while loading it again. So in short, that's really the problem here. The order of the cars, partially also how long the entire train is and everything. So let's take a look at the loading yard that I built down there. And to do that, we can just go through here and also visit the coal mine base camp and the ironworks in the meantime. which once again are two industries that we are really going to need for the operations here, to supply us with coal and to supply us with the tools. The coal I'm actually transporting over by means of its internal industry train right here. So that's just two engines, 12 hoppers in between, and usually I go and take that up to the coal mine, fully loading every single one of them. And then I can just take the entire thing around here, come through the main entrance and bring it over to the location of the supply yard. So this is the actual supply yard for my supply train. So gotta have a few sub-trains that are also supplying the supply train. Thankfully it stops at that point and I don't have supply trains for the supply trains of the supply train. Jesus, I'm making this more complicated than it needs to be. But that's, apart from me being bad at explanation, I think that's kind of a fun, at least for the project here. But yeah, the gist of this is that I have 6 coal towers right here. So half of hoppers from my coal train are going to be unloaded right here. So that's the exact amount that I need in order to load up the cars, the hoppers of the supply train. And I can even unload the other set of hoppers as well. So we actually have supplies in here for multiple times if I do that. But this is also kind of easier doing it with only one at a time, because then I can just pull down the coal tower and load up all the hoppers, and as soon as all of them are loaded, the tower is empty and I don't run any risk of spilling anything. But yeah, that's just the coal operations. When it comes to everything else, I should probably also clarify how the train is positioned in here. It's coming in on the main line, which is just over here. We just went across it. So this is the main line, and the train is just going to follow it along, still being in the wrong orientation. So boxcars are car 1 and 2 after the engine and the tender. But yeah, we come through here, through this little valley, take the second siding if I'm not completely wrong, and we just come in here and park the entire train on the straight. So the order of the train when it is in here, and I need to make sure that I align it properly with the coal towers in order to make the loading happen as I just described it. The order of the train is going to be engine, tender, 2 boxcars, and the boxcar should be somewhere around here. Then 6 empty stay cars for the rails. After that, 6 empty hoppers for the coal, and then 20 empty stay cars again, but for the beams this time around. So, since I already described in depth how the coal loading is going to be going, let's talk a bit about the boxcars right here. Well, this is a little train that just goes between this place and the ironworks, always loading up 4 boxcars so that I can do this trip every now and again and not have to do it every time I want to resupply the train. Maybe I'll add a few more boxcars here after all, just to make this even easier to load up. But in the end, what we have here right now is working out pretty well. And all I need to do is go in between this little train and the gold supply train, open up the boxcars and load over the tool crates from one to the other. And since I only need 60 in total, so that's theoretically 30 in each boxcar on the supply train, I usually just fully load this over, and then the last 2 boxes I put back into this one. So as you can see, there are still a few boxes in here, and this is just a little trick in order to not eventually overfill the gold mine with boxes, just to make sure that it's all working out and I'm eventually delivering everything at the correct ratio. So that's the boxcars taken care of. The The stay cars with the rails isn't really working much differently. I just take 6 of them, put them up to the 6 empties right here, load them over from one to the other, and that's pretty much it. I have a decently long train here. I think that's 24 cars. It's at least 18, but not entirely sure. I think it's 24. So this is a train that I would occasionally need to take back to the iron smelter, make sure that I load it up with rails again, and then bring everything over once more. So yeah, this is just a slightly longer term storage. And as far as this entire yard is concerned, initially I wanted to also take care of the beams here, but it just didn't work out. I could have made it work, but it was just too much of a hassle for what you gain from it. After all, it's 20 cars that I need to take care of, and if I want to come down here with a multiple of that for just keeping stuff in the area here for resupplies, I would easily be looking at another 60 stake cars, so no, thank you. I didn't really need that, and after all, I still need to take care of putting the train back into the right order. So I decided to do all of that while at the sawmill. Also, last thing to mention here, the stopper is not in the correct position. I basically initially had this loading track this far away from the other, which looks amazing, but you can basically, you have a really hard time clicking on it correctly so that it actually does the loading procedure. So now stuff is at least far enough away that I can get comfortably in between the two trains. Looks a bit more off, but it's working out a lot better for me. So yeah, that's everything to do with this area. And once again, besides being able to load 3 of the goods right here, the important part is that the train is still in the wrong order. And that was a major part figuring out, because coming up with a procedure at the sawmill that takes care of loading the cars, but also putting everything back together in the right order, which is different from the order it comes in, it's been a bit of a challenge. So let's see what I could come up with here. To start out with, I needed a third siding. It just didn't work out with only 2. So I come in here with the train partially loaded from the supply yard, and I put it onto one of the sidings right here, usually the leftmost. And over here, the most important thing is that all of the stake cars are placed on here. I disconnect the stake cars from the rest of the train, drive a bit further ahead past the switch, and come back to the second siding. And this is where I'm now going to drop off the coal hoppers, the stake cars with the beam, with the rails I mean, and also the box cars. So the order is 20 stake cars over here, the engine disconnected facing that way. Then over here we have the box cars, 6 cars with rails, and then another 6 cars with hoppers. And now I'm going to just turn the train or turn the engine around over here so that it's facing this direction. And from here we move it onto the third siding. Drive it through until pretty much to the end. And at this point the industry's own helper engine is going to take over. So it's now going to take apart the 20 car long segment for the beams, likely in just 2 segments of 10 to make it a bit more palpable, and just taking everything to the loading area, loading them up, and then pushing them back onto the siding behind the engine. Once all of that is done, we have the engine again facing this way, 20 loaded beam cars behind it, and we have all of the other cars on the next siding. So at that point, all I need to do is move the train forward and connect it back to the other parts over here. And then we have the correct orientation and order again, starting with the engine, tender, 20 beam cars, 6 loaded hoppers, 6 stay cars for rails, and 2 box cars at the very end. Took me a while to figure it out, but I hope it makes sense to you, and what we have over here right now is actually what the train looks like once it's fully loaded and everything is back together. And to make sure, I also only have 30 tools in every single boxcar over here, so that's also taken care of. And yeah, this is now 60 of each good on the correct cars in the correct order, and everything working out perfectly fine. So this brings us back to the start. It was a 20-minute loop pretty much, but yeah, now you can see that the entire thing isn't that straightforward after all. And yeah, I think this is how I want to handle this stuff, unless I come up with a better idea, or maybe you guys have some suggestions. But I think at this point, this is working out pretty well, and I don't see a better way of handling everything here. So what I want to now do is introduce you to a little bit of track that I've been trying out here. I mean, it's my playthrough. It couldn't be that simple. No, this entire train is just a bit too massive for the 2% incline going up to the gold mine. Given that so far it still seems to work, but it's considerably slower at the end, and if I could just lower the grade to 1.5% instead of the 2%, it would work out a lot better. So yeah, there are multiple options to do this. I mean, the most straightforward one would be taking the entire track here, putting it to 1.5%, and just seeing where I come down to. I had 1.5% on my original playthrough, basically with the same route. I also think I went through here there, and then also went around this, which makes the entire route a bit longer. So that brought me down considerably further at that point once I got back to this location. It was too tight in the end, and I wouldn't want to lay this out again because I like to keep to a 60-meter corner radius as minimum. And in the end, the entire track came around over here. I need to cross over right here, and somewhere behind the sawmill, that would be the end of the grade. This is where it would finally reach ground level. I don't think that would be working out here. Later down the line, I reworked the end of everything because making the connection just got more and more difficult with every other thing that I want to improve about the sawmill. So it didn't really work out that well, and I ended up laying out a loop right here. It was an amazing looking loop, but loops are still a bit iffy for me. I would like to avoid them, so I'm not entirely sure about this entire setup if I want to repeat what I had on the old save. I may actually look if I still have that save on this PC. Maybe I can show you guys at the very end, depending on how much longer we are going today. But yeah, I'm not entirely sure about that. It would be possible. But I also wanted to explore something else here, and I think it's time we finally get going to really show that off. To be clear, this is a copy of my save. I laid out another track that I wanted to try, and I also made sure to cut down all the trees so we can actually see it in action. But it's not really gonna be cleared out on my main save because I'm not entirely sure if I want to keep it. It's a massive detour from here, and I don't think it's gonna be worth it. My idea is to basically take the train from here and bring it up on this side of the mountain. There is a place over here where we can switch over to the valley where we can actually go up to the mines. But the problem here is that going over here with 1.5% goes along this entire part of the mountain over here and then comes back down somewhere around here. So that's a far longer trip. And that's partially down to this point being actually higher than the location of the gold mine. So after we make the switch over into this valley, we would be descending again. I hope I set up all the switches correctly. I think I took care of it beforehand. Basically I set up the save and then did something else for a few days. It's still very hot here, so I kinda didn't want to record for a while. It's just very tough focusing while also feeling like you're boiling alive to some degree. And to some degree I mean like around 29 Celsius or 30, whatever it's pushing in this roofed, yeah, right below the roof apartment. Top floor, top temperatures, you can say. But yeah, we are going to be taking the train up the new track, just have a look at it. I think it's worth showing off. It's kind of a nice scenic route, and for the most part it works well with the mountainside, apart from a few minor issues. So while I don't think I'll be keeping it, I at least wanted to show it to you guys. And if you use the middle mouse click menu and go to Re-rail first and then either pick up the logging tool or the demolishing tool, then you can fly around with either of those. So if I want to keep it, I mean I could still use this save as well. If I want to get rid of it, I just fly around and quickly demolish all of the tracks. It's gonna take like 5 minutes to take down. But yeah, this is where we need to start the climb, so I'm going to give it full reversal again. Otherwise we are going to stall out here. So this is 1.5% grade. And again, if the side of a mountain I'm going to cross over into the other valley, if that was at a lower location, it would actually work out amazingly well and I might use it, but since it's higher than the location I need to reach, that's a lot of extra distance I need to climb up that I'm only gonna go down again on the other end, so that's not really working out. And yeah, this is also part of my track. We are about to go into the little turnaround here. The lower part. The upper one is going up to the coal mine, the lower one is where we go to the gold mine. And theoretically also iron ore mine, but I'm not really interested in that right now. I want to show you guys the supply run to the iron ore mine, because that's kinda interesting. With basically disconnecting the train at some point, getting some climaxes involved and bringing that down to another level, bringing the empties back up and all of that. But that's gonna happen at another point. At least I hope it can happen. The thing is, I had a few updates in the past, which has been the anniversary update last October, which bricked the industries. The November update, I don't know what it was called, but it placed a lot of trees again, and I'm happy that I didn't override that save, because that would have made those trees permanent. So removing trees from a quarter of the map again for clearing out the tracks wasn't something that I was in for. That was just another thing where I couldn't play on the map for a while. Of course my PC issues, but that's outside the game. That was more of an AMD issue with my CPU. But yeah, then also up until this update, from the map update forward, this entire save became completely unplayable due to performance. I mean, still some issues persist with industry input, wasting and all of that. But in the end there were definitely a few updates that completely prohibited me from playing on this game, so on this save in particular. So I hope nothing like that will ever come again, but yeah, I'm not entirely positive it won't be an issue anymore. But yeah, from over here we can easily take a look at the main yard, just having an overview of the entire area. I should maybe also quickly jump out of the engine, which is like no problem at all. Totally safe. Activate the front light and that should be it. Also, one thing I noticed is the front lamp on this engine smaller than the one on the rear. This thing always seems to be more massive than the one in the front, and I don't really understand it. Should just be both the same size. But if you look at them side by side, this one is a... It seems like this one is smaller. Or is this just me being silly? I don't know. But yeah, over here on the climb we can just take a look at the mountain ranges, take a look at the main yard, and also some of the track above us. It's quite the scenic route, which I already used in my other playthrough, the original one. And I always liked it so much that, well, once the opportunity came to make use of this again, at least to try it out, I couldn't resist. I wanted to show this to you guys, and yeah, I'm happy that I can. And yeah, we can see some of the other cars in the rear, some of the light is glitching through the mountains at different angles. Right there is the end of the train. Having two boxcars at the very end makes it really easy to identify if the train broke apart for some reason. But I think this track should be working out quite well. And stuff like this is just... it's amazing. And I think we are about to come up to the point where we actually switch over to the other valley. So this is actually going to be the end of this because, well, you're gonna see in a moment. And let's say goodbye to the main yard because I think I better get off here. Oops! Yeah, so I decided to not completely build up the track. I only got to the highest point here. And at this point we would actually need to go down either 1.5% or even 2%, because it's actually quite a lot of height difference that we need to overcome here. And I just wanted to see how many of the cars are going to go down into the valley. Quite a lot. We can take a look at it once everything has stopped. I think the coal hoppers are going to be the right ends, and yeah, fair enough. The rest of the train is gonna go down in reverse. It just kind of filled up. So yeah, this is where we would need to come over, and from over here it would just be a way back down to the gold mine, coming in and doing all of operations. Doing the actual operation stuff is gonna be a different video because that would take way longer, even once we get to the mine itself. So I think this is a good spot to end it here, and I'm just gonna quickly check out my saves if I still have that old save over here. Original 2, yeah, that seems to be it. Let's have a quick look around there. Just to show you guys the 1.5% inclined version of my track going there to the mines. And original 2, yeah, that seems to be right. I kind of wish we had both, not only the picture for the save, but also the date. I usually tend to have multiple saves for the same playthrough, especially in case I try to build out something to test it. But also if I have some risky operations, I just usually like to do it in a way that I always keep a slightly older save to come back to if something goes wrong. And it's really tough to do that if you don't really have anything like the date being shown. It makes it really hard to identify which one is the older one. Okay, quick explanation. This is my original first playthrough, everything being in the default industry layout, and I kinda stopped playing on here after reaching the last three industries because it was not all that fun, and I kinda got annoyed with how the last few industries were placed, and then I just wanted to give it my best try and coming up with my own industry placement version here. So yeah, the end of my main yard over here. Haven't been here in a while. And let's take a look at that 1.5% grade and the loop that I implemented over here. Honestly, if I could make it the same way again, it would be something that I would be inclined to do. It's nice looking in my opinion. Especially from the ground level, I think this one turned out amazingly well. Having enough clearance, theoretically I could even use a truss bridge over here, and just using all the different materials to good effect, like the bridge going over the little crevice down there. Having some parts that are closer to the ground, as per usual, being propped up with walls and all of that, and only using the stilts on the higher parts, and eventually coming back over the entire thing here. I think this is nice looking, but always gotta remember there's another factor to this, and that is what I described earlier. I'm not going straight here. On my current save, I'm basically cutting through a lot of this, I think. But I'm definitely doing a bit of an S-bend here and straightening back out to go over on this end, and that's just a lot shorter. Meaning that there is going to be a height difference between that and if I was to repeat a straight bridge. I mean, for argument's sake, let me just quickly show you guys. So if I go with 1.5%, which is what I've been going on with here anyways, and I now make it over, I mean, it's not too much, but with a low grade like this kind of height difference can give you trouble. So always gotta be careful about it. But yeah, with how I popped up the entire track here, this is a very spicy turn. I think this might actually be 30 meters, and that's something that I categorically try to avoid on my newer playthroughs. So yeah, you are going to see a few things on here that aren't really up to my standards anymore. But here on the other side, we can basically see the continuation of the same track that I built there. So the other side would be going over to the mines, and this is gonna be pretty close to what I built on the other version as well. I think on the other one I got a bit closer to the side of a mountain here. Honestly, this seems steeper. Maybe this is actually a 2%er that I used for something else. I don't even know what's going on anymore with my playthrough. Although, there's actually two tracks here. One is going up, one is going down, so we gotta be careful. But yeah, it's coming around over here, so it may be a shorter track, so might be a steeper grade in the end. There's another one coming through here, going over that side. I think this is a very low grade to go over the back of a mountain here. Something that might be worth considering implementing on my other save as well, actually. Just to get some cars over there, and yeah, it could be useful for something. I don't know. But yeah, I don't want to turn this into a full exploration on this entire save. I just wanted to show you guys some of the bits. Let's quickly, for completion's sake, take a look at the rest of the track on the other side, which isn't too long, but it should also be decently steep here. So this is now coming down to the iron ore mine, which once again is the same location as the gold mine on the other save. Also, the setup here, apart from being in a slightly different order, For the most part, it's pretty much the same, but what do you really want to do here apart from multiple sidings? And since I'm making use of the option to go around this way, why not do that? Oh yeah, there's one other thing that I forgot to mention. With rails and all of that being a bit of a longer trip already, and it's not really worth going back to the other save for that. On the other save, I already have my, I think it's over here somewhere. I have a track coming up from the smelter to the coal mine to supply it with rails, and I have a switchback over here. It would be very easy, and it's actually also quite tempting, just using that train, and from this point over here where we switch over into the other valley, just coming back down, making a few more switchbacks and connecting it directly. So that would be way more straightforward than collecting all the, I don't know, I'm showing this on the map now while everything is not in the same location as on the other. But with my smelter here on the other save, doing this entire thing, coming up and over, coming around here, would be way more straightforward than taking the empty cars from here, bringing it maybe even over the side of a mountain, but all the way over to the smelter and then returning it. But I think it would also be kind of too easy. And while I definitely enjoy the track that I built for the whole smelter yard and the smelter coal mine connection for the rail supply, I don't want to use it that often. So I don't think I'm going to be doing that. I'm pretty happy with what I set up for myself at the other yard there, and I'm going to be keeping on doing that instead. But yeah, that was another little thing that I had in the back of my mind as an option. But I think this way it's working out quite well, and I'm happy with what we have here. So I'm gonna keep it like that and just now, I guess, try to optimize the way I'm using everything. I might actually end up putting some signs down at the sawmill and all of that, just so that I know that in case I bring down another one of those trains in a few months, just to remind myself of the order of operations, because there are a few things like that on my other save, and it's a task keeping track of everything. There have been a few instances where I go to one of the more complex yard layouts, and I have no idea how everything was meant to be done there for at least a while, and I just need to really remind myself of how it's supposed to work. That might not be a good sign, especially if I take in breaks from the game. But yeah, that's my problem. That's something to figure out in the future, likely the near future, because otherwise I'm only screwing myself up for later down the line. But yeah, that's gonna be it for this video. I know it's been a long one. Thanks for watching. I hope it was enjoyable. And till next time. Yeah, thanks for watching. Have a good one and bye bye.